Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Tammy, if you don't know me yet, and I'm joined with Ellii and Anthony, who will be hanging out in the chat and the Q&A to help respond to all of your questions. This is our lunch and learn session, so we're going to keep it super casual. I'm going to give you a demonstration of the ESL Library platform, show you how to find materials, organize your materials, and assign homework. We'll take a little bit of a look at our PDF materials and also our digital interactive tasks that you can work on with your students. So hello, I see some love in the chat over there. Hi guys. I'm going to let Ellii and Anthony handle most of the conversation so that I can focus on presenting, but we'll have them hop on and let me know if there's anything that I need to know. All right, so Ellii and Anthony, if you want to go ahead and hide yourself so we can get optimal screen space. They'll be there for us. And let me go about presenting my screen. All right. So, here we are. We had a lot of energy in the last session, so I'm going to calm things down a bit here. I am logged into my ESL Library platform. And for those of you that are completely new to ESL Library, ESL Library, it's a paid subscription service. We have a ton of different English language materials here for you. And we have materials for all ages, all levels. So it is made for you, the teacher, to try to make your life easier. If you have been with ESL Library for a while, we are so grateful for your support. And there have been a lot of changes. We're always making changes to the platform. So I hope you'll find this useful as you're munching your breakfast or your lunch or your dinner, wherever you are in the world. All right, so I'm logged into my account right now, and I know that I'm logged in because I can see my name here in the top right corner. And on the main page, if you're new to ESL Library, this will not be any big deal, but if you're an old subscriber, you've been with us for a while, this is a new landing page, and we are calling this our Discover page. So it's meant to feature lots of different engaging content. It's changing weekly. We have featured content right here, new materials. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what was happening. All right, so here's the Discover page. Like I mentioned, it changes weekly. So we're going to have sometimes daily, lots of different featured material for you to explore. We mentioned the English with the Washington Post lessons earlier. These go up every week. They're about current events and lots of exciting information to generate meaningful conversation with your students, trending topics, new collections. Tomorrow during the conference, we're going to be talking about social emotional learning. So we have this wonderful collection on social emotional learning you can explore, lessons with videos in them, and then webinars and different workshops. On next week, we're going to be having a coffee talk where you can just drop in and ask us your questions about teaching online. So if you're interested, just go to our website, click there, and you can register for that. And it's just going to be a casual hour where you can drop in, ask your questions. So lots of exciting materials featured on this front page, always going to be rotating. You can see we're also featuring our blog posts now. So even if you're not an ESL Library subscriber, you can access our blog posts just by going to esllibrary.com/blog. And there you'll find right now we're featuring a lot of our conference speakers. You can learn about them there. But we also have tons of materials, inspiration for teaching. If you're new to teaching a different class, or you're just looking for some ideas for the new school year, go check out our blog. There is tons there. All right, so we hope you enjoy our new Discover page there. In terms of finding materials, of course, the Discover page is a great way to get started. You're going to be able to find lots of new, exciting content. We also have this incredible search tool in the top right corner. If you click on, I'm going to zoom in for you guys a bit. If you click on this materials drop-down menu, you'll find we have the Discover page, our collections, which I'll show you in just a second. And then we have our lessons, flashcards, resources, and blog posts. So the lessons, though, that's a full-on lesson plan for you. It'll last an hour or 2 hours, depending on your students. And there's over like 1,300 of these ready-made lesson plans for you. Everything from learning how to write letters and basic phonics, all the way up to business English or graduate school prep. And we also have 3,000 flashcards. I'm going to be talking about the flashcards more tomorrow, so I'm not going to really get into them today, but they are amazing. If you've never explored them, you can create custom flashcard sets and you can do a whole lot with them, so they're really fun. The resources, I'll be showing a little bit more today in my session on our speaking tasks, but I'll click into it really quickly. The resources are things like assessment tools, if you're looking for like grammar tests or self-assessments for your students to assess themselves, grammar and like grammar charts. We have sentence stems here that pairs great with like the Flipgrid presentation that we just saw from Philly. So the sentence stems could be great for generating discussion with your students and practicing. We have warm-ups and fillers, which have tons of ideas for you. Language scenes, which are like pictures. Let's click into one really quickly. I'm going to show one probably later today, but just to show like at home what a resource is. Let's click right into our task player. So the language scene is just it's a picture. There's a little bit of a lesson built around it, but basically it's just a picture with a lot going on. And so you can show it to your students. You could have them write a story about it. You could have them tell you a story. They could just name objects that they've seen. So it's really good for different ages, different levels. It's good for projecting on a screen behind you in a classroom. It's good if you're working one-on-one with students. You can just pull it up on a tablet and you guys can sit side by side and look at it together. If you're teaching online and presenting your screen and sharing it with the audience, or with your students, that's a great option as well. So it's really flexible. And of course, you can use the PDF version and print it out if you want your students to color it in. So there's a lot that you can do with these resources. And these language scenes are just like one example of those resources. All right, so that's under this resources. I encourage you guys to go and explore. And then the blog post, I'll just show you very quickly. We always have, I'm zoomed in a lot, so that's showing up really huge. We have our featured blog posts, which are, or featured articles are always showing right at the top. And then lots of exciting content for you to explore, as I mentioned, at esllibrary.com/blog. We also have a way to, it's kind of a little bit hidden up here. We have these different categories. So most of our blog posts are aimed at teachers to help inspire you. But we actually have a category. So there's like the grammar and usage section. There's, information about working with young learners, lots of different things up here, activities you can do. But we do also have a section called For Students, where the blog posts are written actually for your students. So you could share that with them if you like. Lots of interesting things about like how to remember vocabulary or why you should participate in language class. And if you click into one, right, we all know that you should participate in language class, but not everyone knows why, right? Not all of our students understand why. So if you are a subscriber to ESL Library and you are reading through this and you really like the ideas in here, maybe you want to share it with your students, there's a little folder icon that you'll see in the top right corner. If you click on that, you can go ahead and save it to folders that you create. So it's a good way to start organizing these blog posts that you find. And you can not only put the blog posts within the folders, you can also put lesson plans that you find on the site. You can put the flashcard, custom flashcard sets that you create into folders. And so then if I want to put this into I had it in my unit 1 on spring or my unit 4 for fall. Actually, I'm going to keep it in my unit 4, which is the fall season, because maybe that's the beginning of my school year. And I might want to add it to maybe my speaking class and also my debate class so that my students, like later when I'm looking for materials for those, I can find that and say, oh yeah, that was a great blog post I discovered, last month or something. All right, so you can save that and then you can find those folders later under class prep folders, which we'll look at in just a second. All right, so let's go back to the main page so it looks familiar. Now, there are so many different ways to find materials. Like I said, we looked at the Discover page. You can browse through the lessons, flashcards, resources, and blog. I'm going to show you the collections, and then we'll also look at the folders. So the collections, it's a thematic grouping of materials. And we talked about grammar this morning during the coffee talk, if you're able to join us at the beginning of our conference today. So if you were really inspired to go and teach some grammar, you might want to go head to our grammar collection. And within this, the grammar is like a big giant collection. And you can see within that, there are 14 sub-collections, I guess you could say. And if I click into that, this is very, expected. There are simple verb tenses or perfect verb forms, nouns and pronouns, prepositions. So you can click into one of those. Maybe let's just do simple verb tenses. Keep it simple. And on the left-hand side, I can break these simple verb tenses down even further. So maybe we're talking about simple past today. On the left-hand side, I can just click that, and they'll narrow all of these results down to 32 results. And I can see here that I've got blog posts and lessons. If I want to filter, by the way, when you do this the first time, it's going to look like this in this list view. I like to be able to see a little bit, a lot more options at once. So I use this little grid view or the more compact view. It'll stay like that the next time you go here. But I can see that there's blog posts, there's lessons, there might be some resources. There's a resource in there. If I'm looking for maybe only blog posts, for example, I can go to material type and filter to only see the simple past grammar blog posts. And so those will show up right here for me. Now, if I want to look at everything again, I can just filter to see all of the material types. And if I want to, maybe I'm just looking for simple past for young learners, right? There's 32 results. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, there are 25 results aimed at young learners. So great. And you can also filter by level. I have my account set to the European framework right now. So I'm seeing the levels in the European framework, but we also have the Canadian language benchmarks and also just descriptive words like beginner, intermediate, advanced, things like that. The reason I point out these drop-down menus, obviously they're very intuitive, but sometimes people, they don't even notice them, right? We look over things like that. So I just wanted to point out that these are there and they're there to help you. And you'll find those also on the search tool as well. All right, so that's a collection grammar, pretty straightforward. Now let's look at a different collection that's maybe a little more, well, I was gonna say exciting, but we just had that great grammar talk. So maybe I shouldn't say that. But let's hop into something like, our academic subjects. I think we have our social emotional learning in here. They'll probably talk about this tomorrow, so I won't go into it too deeply, but that's where you can find social emotional learning is in our academic subjects section. And again, on the left-hand side, instead of simple tense or conditionals, you find things like self-awareness or self-management, social awareness. And you can click there and see these different results. So it's a really fun way if you have an idea of a theme that you want to teach, but you're not sure exactly what materials you want, you can use this. I love it for creating like units within my curriculum. And we also, within the academic subjects, we have, like STEM and music, social studies, science. So you can explore that as well. And I'll just show one more collection that I really like is within the global issues. Global issues, we have all kinds of great stuff, but I'm really fond of the environment as a collection or social justice. Obviously, very, very important world topics right now. So you can go there and explore the materials. For the environment, it's sorted by like holidays and events or discussions and debates. But for something like the global issues, if we go into like social justice, you'll see that it's sorted into more themes like racism. If you want to talk about racism with your students, or maybe you want to talk about poverty with your students or criminal justice. So you can click there. We also have this great collection of activists if you want to talk about people. So there's a lot of fun things that you can explore here. Okay, so we got our collections right there under that materials drop-down menu. Another thing that you can do is just use the search tool, right? And if I want to teach something about the Olympics, for example, I can just type that in there. And again, I'm going to be able to sort and see blog posts at the top, flashcards. I've got those same drop-down menus that we saw before, and then our lessons and resources. So if you know exactly what you want to teach or what you're hoping to find, go ahead and search for that. And you can search for some pretty specific things. Like if you want to look for like celery, I don't know, you can see, do we happen to have anything about celery? Looks like flashcards. We got a flashcard on celery. So there you go. All right. Now, that was a lot of information about how to find things. As you're finding things, you're going to want to organize them by putting them into those folders. And also, the folders is a good place to get started if you are teaching a new class for the first time and you just don't know where to get started and you say, Tammy, I just want something. I just want someone to hold my hand and help me through and tell me what to teach first, second, third. Kind of like a textbook, but maybe a little more flexible. And something that I could adapt to my students' needs, that would be great. So that's our folders. Go to class prep folders. We'll click in there. And by default, it's going to take you to show all of your folders that you've created. And you can see I have a whole bunch of folders here. I have all those units that you saw, but I also have like a professional development folder that I created for myself. I can just put blog posts that look interesting for me to read later in there. If I'm part of a school or a district, sometimes we have a lot of organizations actually that will purchase like group accounts. So all of their teachers within there have their own teacher account, but maybe the teachers want to share the materials that they find with one another. So you can go ahead and click on the shared with me and you'll find different folders that other teachers within your group have shared with you. Now for the hand holding, or just the another teacher who has good ideas, we have this ESL Library folder tab right here. So our publishing team has gone ahead and kindly put together a whole bunch of different folders of just suggestions for all kinds of different topics. So you can see they have digital literacy. We had Russell talking about different digital competencies. This touches on that. So if your students are a beginning to low intermediate English ability, and they need to work on their digital literacy, you might click into this folder and see what they recommend. And there will be flashcards and resources and lessons all in a recommended teaching order for you. We have other things like reading for business, maybe financial literacy. You know, if you're working with adults and maybe that is a real world topic that they want to talk about is financial literacy. Or even, you know, college students or high school students, everyone really can use that. Our grammar courses for pre-beginners all the way to advanced. And then we also have our 4 skills courses. If you're trying to teach listening, speaking, reading, and writing to maybe young learners like grades 3 or 4 or 5, preschool, middle school, you can click in there as a starting point. So if I am teaching middle school and maybe I want to teach all 4 skills, I can click into that folder. It starts with notes for me as a teacher, and then it has a bunch of materials, like I said, that I might want to use with that recommended teaching order. Okay, so I'm teaching middle school. I'm teaching English language learners. In general, I like what this has to say. Maybe it's not a perfect match for my students and their needs, right? No textbook, no pre-made set is. What you can do is you can go to this 3-dot menu in the right-hand side. If you get nothing from me today, please take away that you can explore these 3 dots, and there's always going to be cool things hiding underneath them. And that's a great digital literacy tip to tell your students as well. Whenever they see 3 dots, click them and see what's hiding there. And in this case, it says copy to my folders. So I'm not going to actually do this, but if I were to click copy to my folders, what it would do is it would take it from this pre-made ESL library folders area, move it over to my folders. And then once it's here, it's mine, right? I can do whatever I want with it. I can click into it. So maybe we'll just pretend that this fall unit is that. So I can click into it. I can use the 3 dots to remove lessons. I'm never going to teach that to my students. I can rearrange the order of the lessons to put in an order that makes more sense for me and my students. So I have complete control. And then let's say there's another teacher at my group or my school who's teaching the same level. They might want a copy of what I've created. So then I can go ahead and share that folder that I've created. So my unit 4 on fall, for example, it's looking perfect. another teacher wants to use it in my school or district. So I just go to the 3 dots and I'm going to click to share it with. And in this case, Ellii is the only other teacher in my group. So I'm going to go ahead and share with Ellii. So I can choose the individual teachers I want to share with, or I can just toggle on at the top to share it with any of the teachers in my school or district. Anyone who wants to look around through my materials, they can. And again, once it's shared with them, it'll show in there shared with me. So it'll be theirs. It's not going to affect your folder that you've created, right? Yours still stays there, and then they've just got a copy of it, which they can copy and move to their folder and continue to refine so that it's perfect. Okay, so that's sort of finding the materials, organizing the materials. Let's look at the actual materials. I am going to hop into our materials lessons area. I did that very quickly. And go to one of my favorite lessons, which is within the discussion starters, or one of my favorite categories. And I would encourage you to browse through all of these different categories. We have these sections for young learners and basic adult literacy. We have sections for like casual everyday English, academic English, and more like skills like skimming and scanning or identifying the main idea. Find that in this area. Lots of short form reading that your students can do, including current events at multiple levels in this English with the Washington Post section. I'll click into that real quick just to show off a little what's recent and new and featured. And so you can see we have lots of really interesting topics here. They're always getting updated every week. So there's going to be current materials for your students. This category is aimed at low, intermediate to advanced. All right. Let's hop into the discussion starters. This is aimed at a little bit higher literacy level. It's low, intermediate students to advanced. So if you're working with beginners, this is not going to be the category for you. But if you're working with a little bit higher level student, this is a great option. And I can click into something like, let's go to Classrooms of the Future. And you can see that we have a PDF version, which is probably not the most exciting thing, but we do have American English, Canadian English, and British English, a teacher version and a student version of the PDF. And the teacher and student version are completely identical. The only difference is that there's an answer key for the teacher version. And then your audio is built in down at the bottom right-hand corner. You can stream it live or you can download it. You have a few tools in the top toolbar to interact with your students. And again, like I mentioned, just because this is a printable PDF, of course you can print it and you can do that in the top right corner and download it as well. But you can also share it by, if I'm on something like Zoom or Google Meet and I want to share it with my students, I can. I recommend using our more digital interactive tools if you're teaching online, but this is an option. And some students and some teachers are just more comfortable with the PDF format. So here you have some basic tools. You have a pen tool if I want to like underline something, ask my students about what does this mean. That's an option for you. I won't go through the whole lesson itself because every lesson is so different depending on the level and the category it's a part of. But I will point out that on these PDF versions, you'll sometimes find these fun interactive tasks that your students can do in the classroom. I'm not sure if we have any in here. Oh yeah, here's a group task. So I'm not sure if this will be in the digital version or not. We can take a peek in a second. But between the PDF version and the digital interactive format that we'll look at it in just a moment, there is I would say 80–90% overlap in the materials. So here, for example, is a listening task, and there will also be a listening task that's completely identical in the digital version. All right, so let's hop over to the digital version and look at that. So we were just looking, this is on the lesson page right here. We were looking at the PDF viewer. The task player has those interactive digital tasks, and then the assignment manager is how you actually go ahead and assign homework to your students. So let's click into the task player and look at a few of those PDF tasks, or yeah, the PDF tasks and what they look like in a digital format. On the left-hand side here, we can see we have 15 different tasks, and those tasks will be different, again, by category. It'll be different depending on the level it's aimed at for your student. It recommends that you start with a warm-up video, but you can, of course, teach in whatever order you like. And if I click on that warm-up video, we can watch it here. And we're not going to actually watch this whole thing, but you can see that we have a nice little video here.
Classrooms of the future.
It'll go through that. And then at the end of the video, it has these warm-up questions. And so this is just to help get our minds activated, right? We don't need to have any background knowledge. We're just learning. We're checking what knowledge we already have and trying to get our students excited and curious. So we would go ahead, we could talk through those discussion questions. And again, when I'm teaching this digitally, right now, I'm logged into my account as a teacher. So my options for teaching right now are, if I'm in a physical classroom, I can be displaying this on a screen behind me. If I'm working one-on-one, I could have it on a tablet or a laptop, and I can be sitting beside my student while I'm logged into my teacher account. I can also be sharing my screen if I'm working with a large group of students online. So I can share my screen from within my teacher account. And so when you do that, again, there's this full screen option in the bottom right-hand corner of the video, bottom right-hand corner of the video, to enter that full screen mode. I should mention, I think I didn't mention this, all of these tasks on the left-hand side, they can also be assigned to your students as homework. So if you want your students to do these as individual tasks outside of the classroom, that's an option. You can assign it to them. So you might want to do more of that blended learning style that Russell was talking about earlier, for example, where your students, maybe they watch the video at home, and then you come into class and you use that as your springboard, right? That's your jumping off point. We've watched the video at home, and now I'm going to go ahead and actually start teaching about that so that you don't have to spend that class time doing that work. All right, so that's a video. Of course, the video is not in the PDF version. So if you do tend to teach from the PDFs, take a peek at the digital material from time to time, and you can find these materials here. Let's look really quickly at something more interactive. You can see there's, that was a reference task we were doing. So it's more like reading, and videos will be reference tasks. And then this is a more interactive vocab preview A. It's a matching task. So we're checking our students' background knowledge. It's a preview. Again, if I'm teaching online with something like Zoom or Google Meet, I can share my screen with my students. I'm logged into my teacher account, and I'm going to need to elicit those responses from my students. Well, how do my students respond? They're going to respond in the chat. They're going to hop on with their microphone and say the answer. So there's a lot of different options. I could even have them write it on a piece of paper in real life. If they've got cameras, they can show me their answer. You know, I could say, everyone, on 3, 2, 1, show your answer. And they're going to go and hold up that piece of paper. So there's tons of different ways you can elicit these responses if you are not there in person. All right. So this is a matching task. Again, this is a higher level activity. If we're working with lower level students, it would be maybe a picture and a single word that we're matching. But in this case, I might ask my students, okay, does anyone know which word means providing new solutions and methods? Innovative. Which one is that? And my students could be typing that into the chat. They can be saying it over the microphone. And then I can go ahead. Maybe they said, I think it is groundbreaking. So I can click that there and we'll see if we're right or not. I could also call on an individual student, for example, and say, hey, Ahmed, could you tell me which word or which definition do you think matches tech savvy, for example? And he might see the word technology down here and guess it's number 3, and I can match that and we'll see if we're right. I'm just going to go ahead and randomly click the rest of these in. Sorry, I'm zoomed in quite a bit, so I'm doing a bit of extra scrolling for you. And let's see how we did as a class. We did remarkably well, given that we were just guessing. We got 4 out of 6 correct. Good job, us. All right, so I can review the answers here. We can see how we did as a class, what was correct, what was incorrect, and what the correct answers should have been. And we could keep trying again down below that review answers if we wanted to just completely erase everything and start over from scratch. Okay, let's look at one or two more different task types real quick. There's so many here. All of these can be assigned as homework or out of class work individually as well. Let's look at a listen and type. So this is your classic gap fill or close activity. Basically, the students are listening to some audio and they're going to be typing a response in the gap if they're doing it as homework. If I'm eliciting the responses, they're going to type it into the chat. And so what I would probably do if I was teaching this one-on-one is I have the audio right here at the bottom built in. I would click play, let it read through this first paragraph maybe, and then I'd click pause. And I would ask my students, okay, guys, what do you have for this first gap right here? And, you know, they might say, oh, I think the answer is cut it, and I can type that in there. We'll just put some random answers in for the rest and go ahead and click submit. And of course, we got just 1 out of 13 correct. Again, we can see what was correct, what was incorrect, and what our correct answer should have been. The nice thing about the tasks where there's an audio component is that the audio is built in when you're reviewing the answers as well, which is really handy if you are reviewing this as a class or if you've assigned it to your students as homework. I may notice that we had some errors at the end here, and I can just kind of scrub forward, click play, and we could re-listen and hear what we made an error with right there. And then on this task type, you also have the option to just fix your answers. So if you notice that there was an error on something in particular, like maybe the second answer, we could go ahead and just change that and work through the errors if we want to do that. And go ahead and submit that. All right. So that's just one example. I see that we're in a task that has a speaking practice, and I'll just show you what that looks like too, in case you can't join the speaking task session later. And these are not great for teaching live, but they are fantastic for assigning as homework. And so for these speaking tasks, this is just one type of many. We'll be going through more later, but you can see it asks a question in this case, and then the student just clicks on the record button. They're going to record their answer. When they're done, they click stop, and then they can play it back, they can delete it, and go through and respond to everything. So this is not something you want to do live with your students because, you know, if you're sharing your screen, they can't click the record button and record themselves. But it is pretty fantastic if you assign it to them as homework to give them that outside of classroom practice. All right. I'm going to close this lesson. Let's try assigning something as homework really quickly. And I think I would like to assign something for a lower literacy level. I'm going to go into our word bank. This is all about teaching your students vocab. It says it's for beginners, but I use it with my more advanced learners as well. And it is getting close to lunch, so I am going to assign something from the dessert section because that sounds delicious. All right. Now, when you're assigning homework or outside of class work to your students, you'll review the different tasks in the task player. And then as you do this more and more, you'll get familiar with what's there. So once I'm familiar with what these tasks are, oh, I know what a picture dictionary task is, or image match, I know what image match task is. Then you can go to the assignment manager, click there, and go ahead and assign it to a class or an individual student. I'm going to assign that to my conversation class, and let's assign it to all of my students, except Sarah, she doesn't need it. And click to continue. Now I can assign all of the tasks, or I can assign just a few, and I think I'm just going to assign a couple of tasks for her here. Just do 3. And by her, I mean the entire class. I've got 3 assignments, or 3 students who will be receiving this assignment. And then I'm going to set a due date. And we're going to make it due next Friday And I want my students to be done in time for class, so let's make it due by the end of lunch period. Okay, so I can verify all of those due dates there. I could set individual due dates if I want to. And if I wanted these tasks to become available at a specific time, I could set a start date as well. But we're just going to keep it open so it becomes available immediately. And we'll go ahead and assign that. Now, if I use Google Classroom, I can one-click assign it to my students. But if I use any other platform, Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, WhatsApp, Facebook chat, Gmail, whatever I'm emailing my students, I'm texting them, that's all fine. This will work great with that. All your students need to do is go to esllibrary.com/students, and they'll log into their student dashboard there. And if you're wondering what the student dashboard looks like, it looks a lot like this. So if they are using Google, they can one-click sign in on the right here with Google. If they're using Clever, they can one-click sign in on the right with Clever. Or if they're old-fashioned like me, they can log in with a username and password. And when they log in, they'll see their assignment right there. They can also see late assignments, and completed assignments, and I can always go revisit those tasks. So if I click into my homework, this is what the student will see. They have their unopened tasks, picture dictionary, an image match activity, and a see and say. And the picture dictionary, like I said, we'll talk about flashcards more tomorrow, but this is basically what our flashcard player looks like. You can create custom flashcard sets just like this. Pretty cool. And your students can flick through, learn all of their vocab, and if they're not very good like me, they'll just quickly click through and go back to their assignments. But the cool thing is that we actually keep track of how long your students spend on each task. So you'll know if they spent 30 minutes practicing their vocab or if they spent 16 seconds like I did. There's no score for that task because I'm just learning, but it's been completed. And for something like an image match task, this is what it looks like. We saw the matching a word and a definition before, but this is just matching a picture to the word. And if you're there teaching in person, you can make this a lot more creative, a lot more interactive, play games with your students. But for me, if I'm just doing this as homework as a student, it'll just be a one-click match. And I can see how I did. If I want to try again, I can. Let's try to do a little better on that. Get our pie, our float, our tart, and our brownie. And your students are allowed to make as many attempts as they need. I can keep trying, but I'm not going to. Let's go back to our assignments. All right. And so I made multiple attempts. I can see my score right here. My first score, I got a 3 out of 6. If I click on that link, I can see a drop-down menu with all of my attempts and my results from each attempt, including how long I spent on each attempt. All of this information the students can see and the teachers can also see in their side. And to leave feedback for your students, all you're going to do is go to Class Prep, Conversation Class, which is where I assigned it. I'm going to go to my assignments. And I can see that I have no student has completed the entire lesson, but I can see any tasks that my students have completed. And if I want to, I can go in and I can start leaving feedback for my students there, or I can see the feedback from them. So there's a whole bunch that you can do within the platform. I know this was a whirlwind of an introduction, but I hope that gave you an idea of some of the materials that you can find, a few different ways that you can use the materials. And if you're not a subscriber, we have those blog posts, which tons of great information. I hope you can get value from those. Or of course, we're happy to have you join us at any time. All right. Is there any questions that I can respond to? Lei or Anthony?
Hi. We have a question about what do you think a big downside to having students join your ESL library class without email is? That's a tricky question.
Without email, I'm not sure if there is really a downside. We tried to build the platform so that students would not be required to have an email because of privacy concerns, and because some students, it's just difficult to join. So there's really no need for them to have an email address. But if they do have an email address, that's great. And in the future, we may be implementing a use for their email addresses to give them notifications. At the moment, those don't exist. So right now, I would say there's absolutely no downside, but then feel free to chime in the chat if you notice, or if anyone else from our team has thoughts on that. Anything else I can respond to?
We have one. Is ESL all-inclusive, or will I need to supplement my classes?
Oh, that's a really good question. The answer is I can't really tell you because I don't know enough about your student, your classroom, and your students' needs. And that's really what it comes down to. But we have over 1,300 lesson plans. We have all of these resources. For me, I'm able to teach using entirely ESL Library, and I know lots of other teachers are. But that doesn't mean it's going to be perfectly appropriate for your students. If you're teaching something very targeted, maybe you're teaching like dentistry students, for example, we may not have a full curriculum for you. In fact, I'm sure we don't. I would definitely encourage supplementing. But if you're teaching something like an intermediate level student, you could go from beginner all the way to advanced with 2 years of content. And I know that you can because I've designed a curriculum for it. So you don't need more than this, but you could definitely use more than this. And I'm a huge fan of authentic materials and tailoring things to your students. So do what's right for them. And feel free to write into us, hello@esllibrary.com, if you have specific questions. Yeah. Maybe time for one more question? Yeah, they should be able to. This is not a good example because I'm looking at an image right there, but I'm just looking. On most browsers, you can right click, and that's what I'm trying to demonstrate here, and just click translate. So for your students, they should be able to. That shouldn't be an issue, but it really depends. And you might want to be cautious about teaching them that trick. I mean, it's obviously a great tool, but as they're trying to learn English, I know it's such a hard thing to do as a teacher to balance, what's appropriate, especially if they're beginners or younger. They might want that scaffolding. So, but yeah, on any standard website, you should be able to have them right click and translate. So yeah, that trick will work for them as well. It's a website, it's not an app. There's no app for them to download or anything. So yeah, thanks everyone. I'm seeing all those nice emojis, really appreciate it. Can't wait to go through and read the chat. I hope you guys found that useful. I know it's such a whirlwind.